The 4th of July. I don't know about you, but this is a complicated holiday for me. My mother served in the Navy, as her dad did before her. My dad is a Marine because there are no former Marines, just like his dad and stepdad. My brother Daniel decided not to choose between them and went Army instead. All of them believe their military service was one of the best decisions they made, which I deeply respect. I vividly remember watching Daniel swear in at Fort Meade nearly 10 years ago. I was proud of his dedication to this country, anxious about the dangers he would face, even a little jealous of all the traveling he'd get to do. But most of all, I was heartbroken because I was losing my brother as I knew him. As the new recruits lined up, my mom was chatting with another mom who, upon learning of our family's military background, excitedly asked me when I planned to swear in myself. I tried to hide my surprised laugh with a cough as I made a quick exit, my mother covering for me by explaining, "She's my activist." Daniel and I had many long, difficult conversations about mental health, morality, and logistics before he took that oath. I remember him becoming frustrated with me at one point, heatedly asking why I couldn't just be on his side. Instead of asking him a million questions about whether he was getting things in writing, whether he had witnesses present when he met with recruiters, etc. Both of my parents have spent their careers with the Department of Veteran Affairs, so I have heard far too many stories about this country's treatment of its soldiers to trust that my baby brother would be well cared for if anything happened to him. I've seen former classmates lose their battles with IEDs and PTSD, forever altering their own lives or the lives of the loved ones left behind. I grew up watching the news from Iraq after the towers fell, horrified by the body counts and destruction. So when my brother asked why I couldn't just support him, I told him that loving and supporting him were not the same as being a yes person. To me, loving him meant asking the hard questions in the hopes that he would consider something that could ultimately keep him safe. If he got through his enlistment in one piece, mentally and physically, then him being angry with me was a price I was willing to pay. Once he realized that my interrogations came from a place of trying to protect him from things that neither of us could see or control, and I realized that he was just as afraid as I was, we were more gentle with each other and worked towards a common goal. The 4th of July takes me right back to that strange mix of fear, pride, and sadness. I grew up loving this country, unaware of its flaws as many of us were, or still are. The victors write the history, and America is no different. College was a deeply uncomfortable period in my life as I learned more of the truths about the world around me, about the genocide of indigenous nations, including 180 children at the Carlisle Indian School, about human beings kidnapped and sold into centuries of chattel slavery, about the continued oppression of basically anyone who isn't a cisgender, straight, able-bodied, wealthy, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant male. 245 years ago, the Founding Fathers brazenly declared that all men are created equal, and we believed deeply enough in that statement to go to war against king and empire, shouting, "Give me liberty or give me death." My ancestors have bled for this soil since that war, for the promise of what our democracy should be. I often wonder what they'd make of me. But in true UU spirit, I stand here and brazenly declare that the land I love is not a land of freedom and equality. We are not who we say we are. We claimed all men in that declaration, then went on to say enslaved people were worth 3/5 of tax-paying people. We encourage Americans to speak out at the ballot box, even as we close polling places in communities of color, making the lines at least twice as long as those in white communities. We talk about the sanctity of the vote, how every American has a voice, as our politicians meet in the dark of the night to sign legislation making it illegal to give water to those standing in those long lines at the polls. Who is free? We talk about the freedom to chart one's course, even as we pass legislation that restricts a person's right to decide what happens with their own uterus. Those choosing to undergo tubal ligation may still need their spouse's consent, though a vasectomy has never required that legally. Mothers have left the workforce in droves to care for their children during the pandemic, pausing or ending careers, their own mental and emotional well-being taking a back seat to the more pressing needs of their families, as always. Who is free? We talk about trickle-down economics and the beauty of pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps as lobbyists funnel more and more corporate dollars into our political landscape. We are told that anyone can be a millionaire if they just work hard enough, that those with wealth earned every red cent fair and square. But those in minimum wage jobs often need 2 or 3 just to pay rent, and the average age of someone facing homelessness is 9 years old. College means a lifetime of crushing debt. Trade school means time off work or childcare costs. Loopholes in tax law were designed to benefit the wealthy, while the rest of us struggle with no paid sick leave, parental leave, or health care. In this country, a cancer diagnosis can mean bankruptcy. Who is free? You all know these things. I'm not telling you anything revolutionary about the iniquities in this country. We are aware of the injustices, and we see the changes we would make if only we had more clout, more time, more money, etc. But we do have something powerful right here. When Reverend Aya stamped her heel 3 times in her last words to us, she said that if we remember nothing else of her time here, we remember her creed. We need each other more than we know. To me, there is a sense of duty carried in the weight of these words, and the soldiers in my family understand this idea well. It means giving as much as you take, maybe more, for the good of all. It means that we show up for another every time, not just when it's comfortable or convenient, sometimes even when it's risky. It means asking the hard questions to keep each other safe. It means that all of us are responsible for the well-being of our community because it will take all of us to make it through. The battles we face today will not be fought in fields with muskets and bayonets. In some ways, I'm sure that battle is a little more straightforward because the enemy is clearly defined and easily spotted. These battles will also not be won by the grills at our backyard barbecues, where complacency insulates us from that which we can choose not to see. But what do we do when there are no clearer enemies than comfort with the status quo and a collective lack of empathy? How do we wage war on a rigged system hidden behind the facade of democracy? It's a daunting task, to be sure, And sometimes it feels easier, safer, to just sit back and shut up about it. I am only one small voice out of hundreds of millions in this country. Why would anyone care what I have to say? But then I think of Audre Lorde's words. My silences had not protected me. The machine will try to grind you into dust anyway, whether or not we speak. We can sit in our corners, mute forever, while our sisters and ourselves are wasted, while our children are distorted and destroyed, while our earth is poisoned. We can sit in our safe corners, mute as bottles, and we will still be no less afraid. So when my voice feels shaky, I remember that my silence will not save me or anyone. And I hope someone will hear me and realize that neither of us are alone. I don't know how to go about fixing the problems that we face as a country, but the one thing I am sure of is that we will have to do it together. Being in this congregation means we all have a voice that counts as much as any other, and we are free to speak clearly. We all have the right and responsibility to freely seek our own truths and hold space for others as they do the same. We all get to decide what kind of world we want to build, what kind of impact we want to have right here, right now, and we are free to come together and make it so. On this 4th of July, I invite you to ask the hard questions. No, I challenge you to ask the hard questions in the hope that the answers you find may save us all. If we are truly to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, there is much to be done, and it will take all of our passion, empathy, creativity, and grit to do it. The promises of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all have never been kept, but they cannot wait any longer. So let's get to work. So mote it be.